Hi, I'm Ehud, and this is my book, Lilith Operation Genesis, which I will start reading to you today. It is my book. I have all the rights to it, so no copyright or anything like that, nothing to worry about. I'm gonna read the prologue. If you like the book, and if I get comments, likes, and that, I'm probably gonna do more of that. And of course, you're always welcome to buy the book on Amazon. It's not very expensive in the ebook format. Now let's get to it. That is Lilith Operation Genesis, the Collector's Edition, by Ehud. That'll be me. I think we can skip the copyright, but dedicated to Jill, because individualism is not a bad word, to Jessica, because forgiveness is not a bad word, to Brittany, because variation is not a bad word, and to God, because she is not a bad word. Author's Note. This author's note for this 2022 edition of this book comes nearly 15 years after the first draft of the book was completed. Through many variations, edits, and improvements, the story that began the great saga of the Lilithverse has developed so much it is nearly impossible to find the original draft in it. I still have the original draft saved somewhere, of course, as well as almost every version since. This book, this story that began and ended as being a story about people, has taken so many readers into the magnificent world of Lilith. As you hold it, perhaps for the first time, I hope it takes you in as well, to share the successes and failures, the triumphs and losses, and provide you, the reader, joy and entertainment aplenty. Ehud, Grass Valley, California, March 2022. We can skip the table of contents, I think. Prologue. Still alone, staring on, wishing her life goodbye. The chorus, forgiven, not forgotten. Great song, by the way. Through the looker's eye, day of last contact. We did not choose this war. We do not want this war. We might not win this war. Still, if the aliens wish to destroy us, we will give them war. We will give them such war that they will never, ever forget. Excerpt from President Francois Antioch, Declaration of War speech, circa 2217. There was a thrum going through the hull of the transport ship as the twin ion impulse engines began the process of accelerating ions to relativistic speed. The vibration coming through the hull was not coming directly from the engines, but from the force field generated by the landing pad underneath the ship. Subatomic particles had very little mass, but when spun up to near light speed carried a tremendous amount of force. The woman in seat B1 looked out the window at the bleak face of the moon. People on the opposite side of the ship would have a view of Moonport, possibly the most active city in the history of mankind. The woman had no interest in that view. The starport was on the edge of the city, outside the main dome. The airless void suited her mood much better. 3D hollow projections filled the air in the center of the cabin, as the routine pre-flight briefing explained the basics of spaceflight and hyperspace travel to those passengers unfamiliar with these concepts. The woman, a veteran of many flights, paid little attention. She was interrupted from her musing by a stewardess. "May I offer you some refreshments, madam?" the stewardess asked with that fixed, placid smile that people often had when dealing with those who could afford to fly first class. "Yes, thank you," the woman said. "Spacer Fizz soda, the steady variety." The stewardess brought up the holographic display on her data pad to enter the order. She stopped and looked confused. "There must be some mistake," the stewardess said slowly. "I'm showing two passengers booked for B1. Are you Lenora Serena or—" "This stuff happens," the woman cut in. Her standard English had no traceable accent. "They had to pull another passenger for me." "First time I ever see something like that," the stewardess said, but on querying her datapad, she received a strict response. The passenger had military security clearance of a high level, and that's all the stewardess needed to know. The stewardess shrugged. So long as the war with the aliens from Orion continued, military personnel had all kinds of perks. It was not for her to wonder. The inaudible thrum subsided as the shape of the force field protecting the landing pad changed to allow those fast-moving ions through. Magnetic clamps released from the sides of the ship, and just like that, the moon started to fall away from her. B1 hardly noticed the takeoff. She was absorbed in her own thoughts, and those were pretty murky. I'll have to get used to introducing myself with my own name again, she thought. She had just gotten used to introducing herself as Lenora. Should have known that wouldn't last, she chided herself. The fact it lasted this long is nothing short of a miracle. I'd have to remember to not think and talk in Italian either. A clean cut is better. She had been masquerading as Lenora Serena of the Italian orbital colony Nova Roma for almost 6 months now. Looking back, she thought that it was 5 months and 29 days more than she had any right to expect. Or maybe they never lost me and just let me believe I was off their scope, she thought. This seemed more likely. As the bulbous passenger liner accelerated further and further away from the moon, the woman touched her arm pad. All of her fake identity had been scrubbed, she saw. She still had all of her certifications and licenses, but they were now in her actual name. That bothered her. They were very thorough, and the message was clear. Fake IDs won't keep her from them. Only going through will let her off the hook. She sighed. On the holo, the ship's projected trajectory away from the moon was expected to take 20 minutes or so before the ship reached her translation point into hyperspace. Transsolar Onboard Info Panel claimed that it was done to make sure the ship was well clear of gravity wells and orbital stations. The woman smiled a mirthless smile. The truth was that the ship could have translated to hyperspace while still within sight of Moonport. The reason the ship would spend half an hour flying through normal space after takeoff and another before landing was to provide people with a feeling of distance and time, something hyperspace travel will not give them. People needed a sense of time passing and distance traveled. It was part of the human condition. People needed illusions because reality was too complex for them to grasp. The smile vanished and she gripped her seat tightly, pursing her lips. I'm no better, she thought. I had the illusion that I managed to get away from them. How proud and foolish she had been to believe that she could just get away. They approached her shortly before the boarding call for the flight. She was at the business class lounge, the last place she'd have expected any trouble. She preferred to travel on business class, a perk offered by her work as a licensed bounty huntress. The relative privacy offered by business class lounges was so much preferable to dealing with chatty travelers. Miss Serena! The man who approached her was wearing a suit and tie. He definitely did not look like a service person. I'm Watkins. I'm with ATOU. Just like that, simple and blunt. The introduction had chilled her blood. She felt her stomach lurch, bile rising in her throat. The woman seldom felt anxiety, but in this case it was only to be expected. You keep your hands where I can see them and we can maintain a civil discussion, she said, feigning calmness. You know what I'm capable of. Actually, no, I don't, he said. His tone was casual and pleasant. I don't need to know who you are and what you can do. I'm merely here to deliver a message. That surprised her, and she found herself slightly disappointed. They had complete tactical surprise, had utterly blindsided her, and instead of taking full advantage and taking her out, they wanted to talk? The man called Watkins lifted his hand, interfacing his datapad with the one she carried on her arm. She kept her face calm, looking directly at him. She scoffed, her eyes narrow with annoyance as she allowed the file transfer. There was no point in making a fuss. It's not like I keep the really damning stuff on file anyways, she thought, trying to hold back the panic. How much did they know? The file transfer was seamless and the file started playing automatically. The face of a stern man in his late 40s formed above the armpad. "Oh, 07, he said. It's been a while since I've seen your face. General Bates, she responded with a flat voice. I didn't expect to see yours any time soon. He nodded. You've had some time on your own, oh 07. Have you done anything useful with it? The woman grimaced. By rights, the man should be denouncing her for defection and ordering her capture, rapid court-martial, and summary execution. Instead, he was making small talk. It stood in contrast with his sharp-clipped voice. I spent some time doing odd jobs, she said noncommittally. You mean you were apprehending criminals for a bounty hunting firm while trying to find her, he said, and there was nothing casual in his voice now. He didn't need to say who her was. There was also no point in denying it. And now you found her. It was not a question. What are you planning to do, oh 07? His eyes were piercing. She knew what he meant by that question. There was no fooling around with the answer. I'm going to kill her, she bit off every word. I'm going to put an end to her completely and utterly. Good, he agreed. I expected that to be the answer. You're reinstated, oh 07. Your clearance, your access, your name. You don't need to try and hide anymore. Surprise widened her eyes. It took effort to restore the feigned calmness. Why? She blurted. Because you are going to need access to weapons and resources. ATOU is very eager to see an end to this disappointing situation. We have sent a couple of your counterparts in the past, but unfortunately, she was able to overcome and defeat them. There's a detailed brief in the file you received. After that loss, it was decided that the potential risk is not worth it. So you're not going to waste any more resources. She couldn't hold back the growl in her voice. But you decide that if I'm going after her, you might as well help me. Since I'm expendable, nobody will care if I fail. Her response didn't faze him. And you have the best chance to stop her, he said. His voice was cold. You live in the real world, oh 07. This is the deal you're offered. Get rid of her and you can live your life without having to look over your shoulder. I'll get it done, she barked. And I will hold you to your end of the bargain, General. If you start coming after me once I've dealt with her, I will come after you. Just get the job done, he said boredly, and be quick about it. The projection disappeared. First time? The voice shook her from her reverie. What's that? She asked in confusion. A handsome steward, tall, thin, and pale as a ghost, smiled at her pleasantly. I guess this was your first time in hyperspace journey, he said. He had the looks and mannerisms of the astro colonies around Jupiter. No, she said. Why, then she realized what she must look like. She had no doubt that her concern was evident on her face. I'm just afraid of flying, she lied. He nodded with sympathy. Transsolar astroliners have an almost perfect safety record, he said. The engines are virtually fail-proof, and no one had been able to smuggle a weapon onto a transsolar flight in the last 16 years. Your safety is assured. Please let me know if we can offer any assistance. The transport was still accelerating, the moon far, far behind. There were 10 minutes left. She sipped on her Spacer Fizz soda. Second Dark Age sugar levels, except no substitute, was the brand slogan, and sighed. Will they let me go? She wondered. General Bates said they would, but then people like him lied easily and without hesitation. I'll make them, she thought. They made a mistake when they reinstated her because they told her they did not believe she could get the resources necessary to take down her target without them. Her foot scouted under her seat, feeling for the backpack she put there. There was something very comforting in knowing it was there. Considering that I have been able to smuggle a weapon onto this damned ship, she thought, they're not half as clever as they think they are. One day, motherfuckers, your overconfidence will be your downfall, and I will be there to see it happen. Cabin crew, take your seats, the captain announced on the PA system. We'll be translating to hyperspace in 1 minute. The woman in seat B1 closed her eyes and relaxed. After almost a century of war between Earth United and the aliens of Orion, neither side had come out on top. News pundits like to point that the human spirit has dealt the technologically superior Orions no less setbacks than the Orions dealt Earth United Space Corps. Some believed that Space Corps' strategy was that of fighting a delaying war, while human technology rushed to catch up to the Orions. Once technology did catch up, victory would come, they'd promise. If we can hold the Orions back until then we would defeat the fighting forces of the alien menace and force them to cease their attacks. There was much that they did not know. It was scant hours after the transsolar ship left the solar system en route to the colony at Rhea that the Orions made their endgame move, and no human would see it coming. Drifting at sublight speed, the Orion Gargantuan-class starship entered the Kuiper Belt at the edge of the solar system. The codename Gargantuan given to this type of ship by Space Corps was well given. Nearly 10 kilometers in diameter, the warship was a mobile stellar fortress, heavily armored and armed to the teeth. One of these ships could easily lay siege to an entire planet. Such a feat had recently been performed when the Orions forced the human race out of the colony at Tau Ceti. An informed human observer, had there been one, would have noticed that this particular ship was somewhat different in shape than the standard Gargantuans. Its oval shape was pockmarked with square towers, some nearly 300 meters high, holding power conduits a dozen times thicker than those used by the fusion power plant that powered Moonport. At the fore of the ship, where the command bridge was located, the armor had been strengthened with an extra layer. Strangely, it was made of titanium, an alloy more suited for radiation shielding than against beam weapons or missiles. The giant thruster exhausts in the back of the great ovoid were similarly protected. An unorthodox buffer of external power capacitors ringed the thruster exhausts, as if the designers wanted to keep them safe from accidental power surges. Line after line of large capacitors, power transformers, and safety dischargers ran around the body of the ship. The ship's external structure carried enough industrial-quality supergold cables to wire a large metropolitan power network. The Gargantuan's upper decks had been replaced by a huge parabolic antenna nearly 4 kilometers in diameter. Normally a ship like this had a large launch bay, a gaping maw capable of spitting out swarms of fighter craft, bombers, and heavily armed frigates in battle. The theoretical observer might have been shocked to see that this ship did not have a launch bay. Instead, an enormous cylinder protruded out of the ship's bow, a lustrous metallic barrel of some immense beam weapon. The diameter of the barrel was more than 300 meters across, something unparalleled by anything human history has ever recorded. Its length went deep into the Gargantuan's bowels, making it presumably as long as 8 kilometers from breech to muzzle. The muzzle was surrounded with what seemed like metallic rose petals. Those were layers and layers of energy condenser plates, ready to trap and redirect any energy wasted during the operation. It was clear that whatever cannon this barrel belonged to would undoubtedly be the most powerful weapon any human has ever seen. The Gargantuans was a sight that would send any human seeing it running for their life. But there was no human there to see it. The first warning any human got was when Vagabond 9, a robotic hyperwave telemetry monitor satellite in the Kuiper Belt, noticed a massive spike of energy in hyperspace. The robotic satellite transmitted the telemetry to Earth United's Space Research Agency Center on Titan, the moon of Saturn. Holographic displays in the EUSRA Control Center were displaying the readings from over 1,000 satellites in the outer reaches of the solar system. Sentry satellites were transmitting information about ship movements in hyperspace. Eagle Eye telescope satellites were constantly monitoring the universe for stellar phenomena. Vagabond satellites, VAGs as EUSRA technicians called them, followed on the transmissions sent and received through hyperwave broadbands and the galactic cybernet. The average reading on a VAG monitor looked like a wave, going up and down slowly as people went about their normal activity. There would be the occasional spike, especially during graph ball season, but by and large the waveform was the prevalent telemetry on the VAG monitors. VAG-9's monitor spiked up so high the display could not compensate and the form was broken. The system automatically attempted to compensate by expanding the view, trying to encompass the new spike. It was useless. The monitor could not zoom out enough to follow the transmission. A monitor operator viewed the data incredulously for a moment before raising a cry. EUSRA shift manager Dr. Samuel Monroe was at his office when the warning arrived. He ran the 10 meters from his desk to the monitoring station. "I'm getting this reading from VAG 9, Sam," the operator indicated on his screen. "Some sort of massive flux. We're talking readings so far off the scale that VAG can't even see the upper end of them. As far as the VAG is considered, that transmission volume is boundless, or nearly so." "Could it be a false reading?" Dr. Monroe scratched his chin. He spoke in a breathless tone. Monroe had 3 PhDs on his wall, but despite that, always seemed a little like a fish out of water when looking at technical readouts. Can it be some sort of sensor malfunction?" "Can it be anything else?" the operator replied with a low tone. "This flux is like, Sam, if we digitized every bit of information in every human databank in the galaxy and transmitted it through hyperspace at the same instance, we would not be getting a fraction of a percent of this flux. The computer is having glitches just from trying to estimate the volume of transmission." "Well, what about power?" Monroe replied. It was theoretically possible to transfer power through hyperwave, although this was beyond mankind's technical ability. Still, if the simplest explanation doesn't fit, look for something else. Monroe eyed the monitor. "If someone found a way to send energy through hyperspace, could it be some sort of—" "Sam," the operator replied patiently, we're talking such a massive flux. In theory, if we combined every last nuclear and fusion reactor in the whole solar system, we might reach a fraction of a percent of this power, but you need something of a galactic scale to get that kind of power. I'm talking about a supernova or something of that magnitude, all concentrated into one continuous instance of power transmission. By all means, those readings are incredible." "Tell me about it," Dr. Monroe said. "No," the operator shook his head, speaking slowly. "I mean, they are incredible. That is, they cannot be real. VAG 9 is having a sensor malfunction of some extreme sort. You might want to inform Oris Station. I think they'll need to send in a repair crew." He was wrong. 10 minutes later, Vagabond 7, in orbit around Eris, also picked up those readings. This by itself was an alarming escalation, as the dwarf planet was 400 light-minutes away from the Kuiper Belt, nowhere near the source of the emissions Vagabond 9 was picking up. It was as if whatever was happening was moving into or around the solar system at a speed faster than the speed of light. Even though neither VAG 9 nor 7 could pick up a source, the science vessel HSS Clifford D. Simak attempted to use her specialized sensors to intrude on that transmission. The result was a sudden unexplained surge of power that burned through the ship's sensors arrays and computers. The ship would end up limping back to mooring at Eris Orbital Station later that day, having gained no useful information. This situation was enough to raise alarm all across Sol. Space Corps fleets were put on alert while reconnaissance assets, both manned and unmanned, rushed towards the edges of the system. By that time, it was already too late. Idling in the same position, the Gargantuan continued its activity undisturbed. The parabolic antenna built into the back of the Orion ship was now glowing fiercely, channeling amounts of energy so vast they could only be monitored on a galactic scale. Currents of power were running through the conduits, glowing from the towers, crackling as they built up in the ring of capacitors around the thrusters. Even in the coldness of space, the supergold wiring was under enough stress that it heated to almost room temperature. An asteroid nearing the ship was suddenly pulverized by an arcing bolt of power. The discharge came from one of the hundreds of safety dischargers, attracted to the ferromagnetic asteroid. Occasionally, one of the condensers around the muzzle would flare and direct a small beam of light back towards the muzzle, like energy being recaptured. There was a visible change in the barrel as well. A charge of highly condensed energy was growing from the muzzle, like a nimbus of glowing lights. They spread away and appeared to dissipate immediately. Still, there were noticeable afterglows, spreading in space, like the strange imprints on the retina left when a bright light dazzles the eye. The condensed power would require another 2 minutes before an invisible sphere suddenly erupted, unleashing unheard of amounts of energy at Sol's system. Less than 5 seconds later, all hyperwave signals coming from Sol were cut off, disappearing abruptly and mysteriously. The end began with nothing but ominous silence. I hope you enjoyed this. Please drop a like and subscribe. Give me a comment if you have any thoughts about anything. I'd be happy to hear from you. If you want to buy the book, look in the description. It's either below or above, depending on what platform you're using to watch this. As I said, not very expensive. Um, and tell me if you want to hear more. Tell me if you want to start the first transition. Until then, may you have a blessed day. Have a wonderful everything, and see you around.